to episode 37 of the Bithell Games Podcast. I'm Alexander Slawinski.
And I'm Mike Bithell.
Each week we talk games, what it's like to make games, and the random stuff we don't generally find time to talk about because we're playing and or making games. Show notes, Subsurface Circular, available now on iOS for your iPad. Go ahead and pick that up. But also the Steam Halloween sale is going on right now as well.
Is Thomas and Volume in that sale?
Apparently.
This is an off-topic conversation, but did you notice the spike in Thomas and Volume sales?
I did last night and I panicked.
Did we do something? Did we put it on discount? I'm going to have a quick look now, actually, while we're talking.
We did.
We
did.
set up. Did we set this discount up like ages ago and just completely forgot that we were doing it?
No. We did it. No, we did it as part of those other sales that went public very shortly after they were announced.
Oh, I see.
It was buried in that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So yes, I did have a sort of flutter last evening when I was just like, why are
we doing so well on
what's going on today? So yes, welcome to Behind the Curtain for the last
professionalism with Mike and Alexander.
So yes, Subsurface Circular now available on iOS for iPad, and if you're listening to this the second it came out, pick up our other games on Steam right now on sale. What are you playing, Mike?
I've got a couple this week. So shall I do one, then one from you, and then one from me?
Actually, I'm just going to talk about being fancy. So you talk.
Just
games.
go for it. Okay. So Shadow Tactics was the first one. I tweeted something about wanting to play a Commandos 4 on Twitter, and then resoundingly everyone sent me a message saying pick up Shadow Tactics. So if you played Commandos back in the day, kind of Commandos was a really fascinating kind of franchise that really had like Commandos. You had Desperados, which was like a Western version. Commandos is World War II, but ultimately, other than that, there's not really. It didn't spawn a genre. I guess they're pretty niche. Syndicate doesn't play like Commandos, though. Does it? I don't think it does.
Old Syndicate? Like, we're talking original Syndicate.
It looks like Commandos, but it doesn't play like Commandos.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Like, the camera angle is similar, but like, no, it's not. Like, so Commandos is you've got this, you've got a little team of characters. It's basically like an RTS with 3 stealth characters, essentially. So it was a weird kind of hybrid that happened in the 90s of kind of Metal Gear Solid style vision cone stealth combined with kind of your classic RTS controls, and they were great. Commandos 2 in particular is an absolute classic, and it just hadn't really been done for a while. And Shadow Tactics is Commandos with samurai, basically, and it's great. I've been playing that a lot.
Very well received too.
Yeah, but apparently not a big. I got publicly messaged. I think this was public on Twitter by the developers saying like it's not found an audience yet. And I think part of that might just be that Commandos was this weird kind of evolutionary cul-de-sac.
Well, also it's 2017, and anything that isn't leveraging microtransactions and doing like gambling type stuff isn't going to make it to the top of the charts anyway. So
but I think it's also quite an expensive game. I think so. I think there might be an aspect there that kind of people are waiting for sales or whatever. But it is this weird genre, and I think if you didn't,
I actually sorry, now I have to interrupt. I actually saw the lovely Nick Chester pointed out probably one of the best comments that just totally sums up this year. A bunch of games came out this week, 9.5s, right? Like really high scoring games. Comment, that's really great. Can't wait till they go on sale. That doesn't help.
Well, yeah, I'm slightly less militant, I guess, on that. Like, I get it. People pay. I was as a teenager playing games. I wasn't buying games the day they came out either. I was always waiting for them to be discounted and stuff. So I don't know. I don't necessarily agree with that. But
that's because games discounted here. In the States, it was. If a game was $60, it was $60 for a long time. It wasn't the situation.
But that wasn't a good thing necessarily.
Yeah, it really was, though.
Was it?
Yes.
Okay.
You know, it allows people to make more games. When
I think actually it probably doesn't, because I think the reality is that when games are discounted, if games get discounted in a sale, what does everyone do? They buy more games. So discounts are great. Discounts fuel player uptake. They get people into genres and franchises. You know, I bought I just referenced Commandos, right? If Commandos was still a franchise that was alive, you know, and was still kind of around, and it's part of IDOS, so I guess, you know, part of Square now. If they were still making those games, then the fact that I bought Commandos 2, I believe, at £5 in a sale, I just spent £35 on Shadow Tactics at full price because I love that genre. If Commandos had been one of the franchises from that era that had continued on, then I'm now a paying customer willing to pay £35 for a new Commandos game. You know what I mean? Like, I think sales encourage an audience growth. Anyway, that's a big topic for another day.
It is a big topic.
But no, I love sales. I think sales are a great thing. Anyway,
I like sales too. I just like them on the front end.
I see what you did there. You did a fun pun. You did a fun pun. But yeah, so Shadow Tactics is great. It's it feels like a really nice, refreshing, and also kind of deliciously old school as well. Like, it definitely is still clunky's the wrong word, but it's got that depth and that complexity that Commandos had, and that kind of weird nuance to the control schemes, the kind of, you know, holding down, you know, function keys to do things and stuff. It feels like proper Commandos. It makes me happy. Then yesterday started Wolfenstein, the new Wolfenstein. That's the name, I think. Wolfenstein, the new Wolfenstein. That was great. I only managed to get a couple of hours played last night, but like, yeah, more of Wolfenstein. Wolfenstein New Order was one of my favorite games of that.
Apparently, it starts out really strong. Like,
So I disagree. I don't like the opening particularly. Like, it starts out story-wise great. Like, story-wise, and like, it's not pulling its punches. You know, very, very early on, it's yeah, I don't want to spoilers on the show, but they're working very hard in the opening hours to say that, you know, that Nazism is not a German problem. It was a problem in the world at large in the 1920s, 30s, you know. It definitely is making a point about racism, especially in America, you know, leading into that. Similar to, reminds me actually of the, is it Band of Brothers, where you've got the American troops going over to Germany and they're like exchanging Jew jokes on the flight, something like that. And it's a moment they give in Band of Brothers where they're like, this was a prevailing, anti-Semitism was not a German thing, it was a worldwide thing at the time, kind of thing.
Well, one of the things they definitely do in Band of Brothers is one of the guys makes fun of a bunch of POWs, and it turns out like one of the POWs was like from Michigan or something like that.
Yeah, but that was a real thing actually, because I read the book it was based on, and that actually was an event that transpired. And obviously you did have a lot of Americans going over, but I mean in a less literal sense, in kind of a, you know, there were the idea that yes, there were Americans that went over to be literal Nazis in Germany, but there were the idea that racism was something.
And now they just stay home. Haha.
But that's my point, is they stayed home then as well, and you had, you know, there was a lot of American racism and American stuff, which if alternate history had played out a little differently, maybe the Germans would have been welcomed, you know, with open arms by certain people in America at that point in history. And that's something I wasn't expecting. I was expecting a much more, you know, kind of pantomime villain. French resistance style. Well, they're going there. Like, they're definitely, I'm not far enough in yet, but it's very clear from where the narrative's going that they're going to go into that stuff. But even the French resistance, to a degree, is fictionalized in terms of how we talk about history. This is more about European history than I was expecting to be talking. But like, the idea of the French Revolution wasn't as prevalent as we'd like to believe, because humans like to believe that when confronted by evil we'll be, you know, super active and fix it, but actually humans can be pretty complacent with this stuff. Anyway, it's interesting, and it starts in a way that's pointing in that direction, but also has that kind of B-movie fun that New Order had, and kind of, they're definitely there's Chekhov's monkey has already been established. that's a reference. Chekhov's gun is a writing thing where you say, well, if there's going to be a gun used in the third act of a story, you have to make sure that the gun is seen in the first act. There is a that's all I'm going to say. There's a monkey in Wolfenstein that has "I'm going to be important in the third act" written all over it. I don't know if that's true or not, but like there's things like that. But there's some really interesting story beats kind of being set up, and kind of I'm interested where it's going. The one thing that is particularly weird for me, because I loved New Order aesthetically, like I loved that kind of alternate 60s, like what, you know, as a graphic design nerd, like what would, and an architectural nerd, what would the world of, you know, what would Hitler's Germany have looked like in the 60s? Like how do you extrapolate that onwards, and how does that kind of oppressive culture mash with what we know happened in the 60s in terms of aesthetic design? And that was something that I thought they did really well in the first game. In this game, they're holding back on the Americana. Like, I know it's coming, but I'm about 2 hours in, and I've not gotten to the stuff that's in all of the trailers where you're walking down like Main Street USA with swastikas on walls. I'm not there yet, and I think they're teasing that. It's that kind of, it's like in which Halo was it, where all the marketing was we're going to Earth, and then you didn't get to Earth until one level, about 4 levels in. They're doing that a little bit, and I get why they're doing that. They're kind of holding back the big kind of keynote sequence, but it's good, and I'm surprised at how clever it is in its dissection of fascism. You know, they have there's a sequence very early. Have you played New Order? You've played New Order, right?
I played a portion of it. I never actually got all the way through, to the point where actually I do have a question. If you because there were two things that happened in the New Order, right? And does New Colossus follow up on that? Like
in terms of the player choices?
Yeah.
So they have a flashback sequence where you remake those choices. Okay. So you can sync it up. But on that note, actually, there's a scene, one of those choices very early in New Order, where you've got, you know, a bad guy who is, you know, threatening 2 of your friends, and that is used as a way of doing the kind of which of these characters is going to survive and be in the rest of the game and play out. And that's a cool, scary moment, and played for the drama of it. Very early in this game, they kind of echo that scene, but it plays out very differently. And they also, they do a similar style scene, but they use it as an opportunity to kind of show the cruelty of the characters involved, but also to introduce this character who's been in some of the marketing. Actually, the daughter of the villain is an overweight woman. I think that's been a couple of the trailers. She's and her mother is very cruel to her throughout and mocking her. And in the trailers, it looked kind of, oh, they're going to do it's just going to be a way of doing some fat jokes. But very quickly in this game, they're using that as a way of talking about kind of just how evil Nazi ideology is, but you know, through the lens of just a fat woman, just like a woman who's overweight, being bullied by her mother. But within that, they're telling the story of oppression, and telling the story of what fascism actually is, when you know this idea of idealism taken to its natural conclusion. I'm really surprised by how good that side of it is. They might drop the ball. It might be that, you know, I'm talking next week about how, you know, how they completely got it wrong, but like there's some really smart writing, and that was present in the first one. Like the first one. The New Order, obviously it's not the first Wolfenstein, but the New Order, I mean, they went to, like, you know, they had a work camp. You know what they were, you don't get to say Arbeit macht frei without, like, having some kind of historical, like, quality to your writing, that you're not just exploitative, essentially. And somehow they managed that. They pulled that off, and it feels like that's emboldened them to actually want to say some stuff about what fascism is. And it's as a history nerd and as a writer, I'm fascinated by, like, what they're doing. Like I said, it could pay off wrong, but they also have the B-movie stuff. Chekhov's Monkey is a great example of something that's very goofy. There's the level I'm on right now is in an environment. I'm going to keep this vague. In an environment that's had an A-bomb dropped on it, And where are the characters all living? They're living at the top of a skyscraper because that's far enough away from the blast center because they're so high up that they're out of range of the radiation. I'm pretty sure that's nonsense. I don't think that's how radiation spreads, but it's that B-movie fun that kind of, permeates stuff. Right now, it's achieving a really good balance.
That's what the Jetsons did.
What's that?
The Jetsons?
The cartoon?
Yeah. That's why they all lived in cities in the sky.
Is this like a fan theory? I don't think a Hanna-Barbera cartoon opened with "We blew up the world and now we live in space," did they?
There is absolutely a scene in one of the Jetson movies where the smog is really bad, so the houses go further up on the stilts.
Oh right, nice, okay. Oh, fair enough then. But so that's the stuff I like. There's a really nice B-movie quality to it. I'm surprised by how kind of much it seems to want to say about fascism, which is interesting, and some of the historical references and stuff it's making are fascinating on that area. It's good stories, gameplay wise, and then we can move on. Gameplay wise, it feels a bit like it suffers from the game designers got too good at it. This is something that I've worked on games where this has happened, and it can creep in. I'm sure there'll be get good comments in the YouTube thread, right? But it does feel a bit too hard at the normal difficulty setting for the kind of game it is. They've always had this idea that you can kind of overcharge your health, but the amount of kind of standard health is now 50, and it feels like a very small amount, and depletes very quickly. It's a game where it seems to want you to charge forward and be the action hero, but actually the way the health system works kind of makes you feel actually quite fragile, which is made worse by the fact that you are meant to be in this super suit. You probably didn't get to this point in Wolfenstein 1, but like you've got a Jewish exosuit, which is the coolest idea. I love the B-moviness of this. In Wolfenstein there is a secret Jewish order who their mode of worship is to create amazing technologies to be closer to God, which I love as an idea.
How have I not played this game?
It's amazing. So you have this exosuit that is like this big gold Star of David hexagon kind of amazing thing.
How have I not played this game?
You need to play Wolfenstein, man. Like, genuinely, New Order was so good, and this one feels like it's heading in the similar direction. It came with a TV guide. I've got it somewhere where it's like it's really great world building and really great kind of any game that can handle, you're literally punching Nazis in the face wearing an Iron Man suit made by an ancient order of rabbis. Like, it couldn't be better. Like, it's definitely wearing its heart on its sleeve. Anyway, but because you're wearing that exosuit, it feels really weird that you can be taken out by a couple of shots by a character you didn't see. There's a weird kind of thing there where, and this might just be because Doom came out in the interim, and Doom is so good at pulling you forward and making you feel like a badass while still presenting challenge. This feels like it wants me to play more stealthy, but the storyline is telling me I'm a badass. So it's a weird mismatch. And sometimes when you see that in games, it's because frankly the team got too good at the game and therefore ramped up the difficulty. And yeah, at the medium difficulty, it feels a bit hard, to the extent that I'm considering lowering the difficulty just so that I can feel the way the game's telling me I'm meant to feel, which is as a badass.
But then you're gonna have the image of BJ with the baby.
Well, this is what makes me think they knew that there might be an issue here, because there is an interim one. There's the baby one, which is like, what is it? Don't hurt me, or what's it always been called in Wolfenstein? The one where he's in the baby mask. But there's now an interim one between normal and baby, where it's just BJ like making a kind of a scared face. And I think that they might have added a difficulty mode in between those two, because I think someone inside the company and it's called something like normal. And the description of it is like for an experienced gamer looking for a less challenging experience or a smoother experience or something. Like, I think there might have been a last minute addition of that difficulty mode there, and that's the default. And I put it onto the one that says medium. So maybe I'm just playing the game wrong. Like, maybe I've just not chosen the right difficulty. I've taken medium to mean normal, and actually I should be the one above. But whatever. Or I should just get good. But
get good, Mike.
It's not that's the one thing I'd say. But no, the set pieces are great. The enemy designs are cool. The upgrades they've made to some of the weaponry are really interesting. Like, it's good. I'm having a great time, but I'm still only a couple of hours in, so I'll report back next week on how the rest of it goes.
I spent a little time at the Breakthrough Brits event.
That's a fun. It's a glitzy one. It's a glitzy one.
Yeah, it's definitely glitzy. It's definitely nice. The main reason I'm bringing it up is again the sort of sense of community here as compared to the States is very different. Essentially, if you live in a region or if you live in a place where you have access to a community, it's a change. It's definitely a different situation.
Yeah, because there's a little Boston community, isn't there? But like, it wasn't as like focused as London is, right?
But there also just isn't a sort of coherent US dev sort of scene. Like, depending on,
you don't have bodies like BAFTA who are doing the big glitzy events or
correct.
Things like that, right? Yeah.
Like, even sort of the IGDA events are very regionalized. There isn't a coming together type of thing. So it's just one of those moments where it was a very nice event, met a lot of really cool people doing a lot of interesting things, and yeah.
You were very popular. You stepped up, because I didn't go to the event, but I ended up meeting up with you guys after, because I'd been out for dinner with some friends. And you walked away and everyone was like, we really like him, he's really cool.
Aww.
You were like helping people with stuff and carrying someone's shoes and doing various things, and I was hearing all these stories.
I did
about
carry
you being
someone's shoes.
A nice guy. So I was like, oh, good on him. He's clearly tricked these people into thinking he's a decent human being. It's good.
I do all right with that.
You're very good at that. You've got a skill for creating the illusion of professionalism and friendliness. Yeah, it's good. I'm sorry.
Now it's time for what's going on at the studio, and this one's a bit of a deep cut, but I think it's important now, and it's certainly important for any of you out there still in school. It's a really basic thing to do, and it makes a huge difference. And we're sort of talking about it right now because of Brexit and the uncertainty of the European market, but it also applies to if you're a Canadian or in other regions. This topic is having bank accounts in the currency you're receiving your money in. This is something that you can set up with your bank. You can have the currency that's coming in stay in the currency that it was paid in. This, especially in the UK and the EU right now with the fluctuations, kind of important thing. In terms of really deep cutback stuff, most accounting software, in this case Xero, does allow for multiple currencies and does real-time conversion so that your accountant won't murder you at the end of the year when they're doing the books. But it is a small thing that you can do to sort of protect yourself and your business from these sort of tumultuous currency fluctuations that are going on. And it also prevents the issue of money coming in one currency being converted into your local currency, and then you working with contractors or something like that back in another currency and then converting it back out again. Since most, with clearly a few exceptions, since most business is handled in US dollars, the money would stay in US dollars, and you could do that. It's also interesting from the I do know lots of Canadians who actually do this because it is paid out in USD. And so you'll hold on to your money in that sort of the US dollar account, and then you convert it over in massive chunks. So when you're paying your staff or you're doing that type of stuff, you convert it over in these huge chunks so that you're getting the best exchange rate possible and you're not at the whim of the whatever currency fluctuation is going on right now. So for example, every month I have to go to the HMRC website. I have to look at what the HMRC classified the currency rate for that month, and it goes all over the place. Like it definitely can go up and down to the point where once you multiply that out in sort of large numbers, it makes a huge difference to how the money is flowing. So a little thing to do, go to your bank when you're setting things up, or if you've already got an account, check with your bank to see, hey, can I, if your money's coming in, it's very likely going to be coming in US dollars, but hey, can I set up a US dollar account as part of my bank account and just have the money flow into that? Small thing.
That was Money Talk with Alexander Slawinski.
1, 2, 3. I wanna thank you for reading the freedom mail again. Thank you for reading the freedom mail again.
Greetings, Sire Slawinski and your Bithelness. K-Pasta, I've heard your call for questions.
Wow, this is a aesthetically intriguing opening to it's bold, it's innovative, it's interesting. It could go in one of two directions. Let's find out.
That's what's so surprising about it. It's really good. It's really good mail.
Good. No, I'm pleased.
So here we go. K-Pasta. I've heard your call for questions and took pity. Kidding. You've really helped me out before, and I could use your perspective in thinking about a problem once more. I'm considering developing a small game with subject matter focused on my experience with religion. Potentially, players could consider the game offensive. Comparable products could be Anna Anthropy's Dysphoria or Ed McMillan's I can't say this on air. As a junior designer, I'm considering the possible implications for my career. Your allusions to rookie developer F-ups put the fear in me. Some of my considerations, sorry if too much. The goal is to put my name out there, and unique personal subject matter could help for coverage of the game. Fear of alienating potential partnerships, and personal branding. It works really well for Ed, but maybe not me. By the way, just joined the Listen to Every Episode Club, and I'm going to reward myself with Subsurface Circular. Thank you, and keep up the talking about things. Your peasant all. Jared, P.S. If you'd like me to be less vague about this game idea, I'm happy to message you with more details. So I did, because I definitely.
Can I just interrupt quickly and say that this podcast is, if anything, has a socialist leaning. So therefore, it serves repeating that if you're a peasant, then so are we. We're collaborators here. This is not, you don't need to kneel as much as that in an email.
Is there a term for what I am? Like capital socialist?
Like the cruel term would be late stage capitalist. You're a neoliberal.
No.
Yeah, you are.
Really?
You are. Like, I love you dearly, but yeah, you'd be like you're a.
No, we know some of those. I'm definitely not.
No, you are. Do you know what a neoliberal is?
I mean, apparently not, because
neoliberal is someone who, ultimately, let's keep capitalism going and generally be nice and progressive. Fiscally conservative, socially liberal would be kind of your neoliberal kind of stance. You're a neoliberal.
Okay.
Yeah, you are.
Okay.
You are. Then we love you. We love you in spite. I'm raving socialist. Although
to your own detriment too.
To my absolutely. I could have made lots more money if I was
so
less
much more
nice.
So much more.
Man, I sleep so smugly, like any good socialist. Carry on.
And that's what keeps me up at night.
You asked for more.
So yes, so I asked for more, and there's some sort of sensitive subjects which I won't go into, but this is sort of what he said was cool to use on the show. Anyway, this is Jared again. The game tracks my journey from introduction to religion. It's a prominent religion, which I won't name, to deep religious involvement, to disillusionment and excommunication from my friends and family. In the game, I'll recall old Sunday school lessons and represent them as interactive propaganda posters. Idea came to me when I saw a church sign say, quote, "Beware your thoughts lest they become words," and felt that it was fitting for an interactive propaganda poster, filtering a mechanical brain through church-approved content and destroying the rest. I want to say, quote, "This is my perspective now," but not claim that I have all the answers. It's a difficult balance. So that's where he is right now.
Okay. The citation of Sunday school kind of points in the direction of which aspect of religion we're probably talking
that means you don't know that much about religion. Like that could be any number of different groups.
Okay, carry on.
So yeah,
I don't know much about religion, in fairness.
Yeah, no,
beyond
exactly.
Its history, I don't know the practice of a lot of them. So do you want to go first? Because I feel like I'm going to be more artsy fartsy, and you're going to be more practical.
Yeah. So my practical sort of statement on this is, you can absolutely do all of these things, but you still have to make a good game. And it shouldn't be. I would express that I don't believe it should be heavy-handed, because if you are trying to get the most people to sort of experience this, it still needs to be a good game. This can start to veer into it's not edutainment. What's the word I'm looking for here? Because you and I have played a couple of these things that, not necessarily about religion, but they're really ham-fistedly trying to get their message across, and it doesn't. It's a kind of a turnoff, because it's like watching a movie that's trying too hard. Like what is that? Is there even a term for that in the game development scene?
I mean, subjectively, from your perspective, you're describing something that you find pretentious, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'd be very careful about objectively calling that anything, because good game is such a subjective perspective anyway. Like, it's not something you can kind of throw around in an objective way, but like, you're talking about, you don't like ham-fisted, kind of preachy work.
Preachy.
You're saying.
Yeah, I guess preachy is the thing. It's trying too hard. It insists upon itself.
Yeah, I'm gonna have a contrasting opinion. Carry on.
So yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so don't listen to what Alexander just said. That's terrible advice. No, my key thing, and I did a talk at GDC about this, about punk games. Because punk games interest me. I am boring. I make stuff that's kind of safe. I do, if I want to talk about any issue like this, I tend to go with allegory. You only have to look at Subsurface Circular. Like, Subsurface Circular is dealing with a lot of things, but it's not doing it in a direct way. It's doing it in an allegorical way, in the kind of classic Star Trek way of like, let's talk about race by having two aliens with white and black down the sides of their faces, and it's flipped. And that will be a way of approaching some of that stuff through metaphor, through allegory, and
But hold up, you did the same with Volume, and you did the same with Thomas. Earthshape is the only one where I think you would really need to dig to.
Earthshape doesn't, to my knowledge, have much in the way of politics in it at all. No, it's not. I'm a political creature. I have like I said earlier in the show, I'm a history nerd, so I always try and put that stuff in because I think it's interesting. But I've never made a game that is absolutely and directly about subject X. I've always kind of used it to talk. I've used games to talk about that stuff in a less direct way.
So far, you're agreeing with me.
So far, I'm giving an example of how we make games.
Okay.
But what I'm not going to do is the next sentence I like there's a slight, because I think we're both quite tired and it's early on a Saturday. There's been a prickliness to this podcast, which I hope that's enjoyable to the audience.
There wasn't until you pointed it out right now.
No, now it's awkward.
Well, now it's awkward.
So the other option is to make stuff that's very on point, and that stuff can be amazing. And there is this enormous punk movement. What I'm saying is, I think we play it quite safe. We have a very different approach. While Gene Roddenberry was making Star Trek, there were protests and zine cultures and punk music and stuff that was fighting the establishment. Star Trek was part of the establishment. It was talking about this stuff in a mainstream place, and yes, hopefully having an influence in that way, you know. But there were also these kind of artists. And I guess that's what the whole question comes down to for me is, do you want to be like us in terms of being a commercial company that makes products, I guess, that have leanings towards artistic intent? That's something we want to do. I certainly do as a creative, want to speak to people and put meaning in my work. Or do you want to be a punk? Do you want to be someone who's fighting the system and outside of it and making stuff that's very artistic and very specific and very personal? That's valid too. That's an absolutely okay approach to making stuff. There's lots of people doing that, and people, you know, live off that work and create stuff. I don't think there's a right answer. I think it can be either or, but I think you have to go in with intent. I think you have to decide which it is you want to be, because if you try and do something in the middle, I think that can be you can end up just making something that doesn't either appeal to a mainstream audience or, you know, speak solidly enough about the themes to the people. So when you ask the question, like, I'm worried about offending people, either you have to not worry about offending people and make something that's completely artistically truthful and out on a limb, and you accept that, you know, this is not going to be something that is going to ever be in a Humble Bundle, or you go, actually, I want to talk about this stuff maybe in a more allegorical way, in a way that makes people think, but is digestible and kind of approachable to players.
Yeah, but then you have something like Binding of Isaac, which is completely vulgar, but it still found this massive...
But I would say Binding of Isaac, for example, it's vulgar in a... Binding of Isaac isn't disgusting. Binding of Isaac that's a mainstream ed game. That's Beavis and Butthead. That's Rick and Morty vulgar. That's like, it's gross out, but it's also like definitely made as an entertainment product. Like, it's fun and rewarding and built on, you know, dungeon crawling, you know, Zelda-y stuff, kind of, you know, roguelike stuff. Like, they are making an entertainment product. That's still allegory. He's talking about themes of his childhood and his kind of political this is me reading into it. His kind of the role of religion, the role of parenting. Like, he's got some stuff he wants to say. He's just being as allegorical in that game as I am in Subsurface. He's chosen a different aesthetic. He's chosen a different kind of approach to it. But, like, I know in other stuff of his is actively, like, and it's not designed to be entertainment in a kind of a classic kind of, this is just a throwaway fun game for you to play kind of way. This is, he has art and he has commerce. And I think there's different work that I don't know if the guy even thinks it through it in this way, but like, that's my reading as an outsider. So I think that's possible. You can bounce around, but on a game by game basis, you need to be thinking about, how are you trying to say these things? Are you trying to talk about this thing in a way that is allegorical, or do you literally just want to make something that's like super biographic? And you should be prepared that will offend. If it's going to say negative stuff about a church, then by definition that's going to offend people. But, you know, you can also talk about, you know, you can make Deep Space Nine and use the Bajorans as an allegorical way of talking about religion, the pros and the cons. Like, there's different roads open to you. In this case, it sounds like, from the tone and the fact that the person's writing into our podcast to ask the question, implies to me that maybe the allegorical route might suit better for their purposes. But what I don't want to do is dismiss punk rock games, because punk games, the kind of work Anarantropy works on, is cool and important and interesting. but it's not done. I don't think it's done with the intent of like being a commercial product. And
yeah, but if he's not making bank on the lecture circuit, he can't just make like, punk.
This, by the way, what you're doing, this is neoliberalism. Carry on. Seriously though, that might not be it's a he, right? The person who's he might not be financially motivated. He might want to live okay. In the indie space, I think we very often truncate a lot of objectives together. They have to be artistically motivated and speak to people. They have to sell 10 million units. They have to be well reviewed. You can aim for one or two objectives without having to worry about the other ones. And I don't know enough from this email and the information provided to know what the objective is here. So all I'm trying to do is I'm trying to frame this as a choice that you should make. This isn't, is there a problem here? Will I offend people? I'm saying the more important question is, do you want to offend people? Is that like your objective? Because that informs, what your budget is for the game. Because if you're making something that's artistic and punk, you probably shouldn't try and go and get a publisher to fund it. You know what I mean? Like, that's not going to work. It informs everything in terms of your decision making.
I don't know, but then there's the other part that's just like, it's 2017. Getting offended is just the thing to do. Like, there are things that you could do 10 years ago that are just as whatever now. It's just that you have a group, whether it's one side or the other, that's just trying to attack at all times. So I don't know, like trying to say.
Well, that's. I mean, if you're going to get criticized. I mean, Subsurface Circular got criticized for being political because it mentions global warming. And I'm sorry, I don't care if that person's offended. Global warming is scientific fact, and I made a game based on hard science, so therefore it mentions global warming.
That's not even the most offensive thing in the game.
No, it's not. No. But that's my point. Is with offense, I don't like the kind of two-siding of what you just said, but like the
well, neither do I. But that's where we are. Like,
okay, we disagree on that aspect, but yes, there will be offense caused. I agree with that. Like, anything you make that says anything will offend someone. You need to decide if you care and if that's going to negatively impact. Subsurface Circular annoying a couple of global warming deniers doesn't affect its primary objective, which is to be a piece of commercial art. If we'd made Subsurface Circular and we decided from the outset, this is art, this is me, screw my reputation, it doesn't matter, I've got these things to say and it's going to offend 90% of the population, then that would be a different series of choices we would have made on the game in terms of like, well, I can't afford to spend any money on it then, and I shouldn't tie my friends and colleagues to it because I should, put myself out on the limb. I'm just saying there are different objectives. I think you're making a reasonable assumption that this is someone who wants to make a piece of art that then also sells and is a viable game that kind of on a financial level. And if that's the case, I would push towards allegory. I'd push towards, or I'd push towards something. It's just
I mean,
layers.
if you're an artist and you don't care about anything, like, then
you care about, as an artist, you would care about the statement you were making more than the money. Yes.
Okay.
This has been a journey, this question. Thank you to the original email writer.
I told you it's a good one.
Work with intent. That's basically the summary of the last 20 minutes of what I've been saying. Work with intent. Decide what you want. What is it? What is your objective here? Are you trying to say something and damn the costs and consequences of that? Or are you trying to make a commercial product through which you talk and therefore make informed decisions based on that? When I see awesome punk work that does really interesting stuff. I see awesome commercial art that touches on... I was talking about Wolfenstein earlier, a very commercial game that definitely has something to say. But also has a disclaimer at the start saying we don't have anything to say. So it's a trade-off. It's always as long as you're moving with intent, then you can judge yourself by your intent. If you offend the wrong people, that's something that happens, right? Where people will have something they want to say and it'll be misinterpreted.
This is why I have a problem with this whole offense thing, because
Sure.
from what I'm seeing, what I believe his intent to be, he's not trying to offend. He is trying to express things that happened in his childhood through a lens, and because it caused harm to him and to people around him. If you're offended by that, this is where the whole two sides thing. It's like, if you're offended by that, this isn't a two sides thing. Like, he was attacked and hurt by his past experiences as being part of this group. So I don't know. Artistic intent.
But you should be prepared that will offend people, because it will. I mean, I assume I don't have you've got more information than me. So if if I sound ignorant, and if the person writing in, just to be very clear, I don't know anything beyond what's been said here. So if I sound ignorant,
no, you don't. But you don't sound ignorant. No,
but the specific thing here is, if it's critical of a church, which it sounds like it is, then by definition, members of that church will be offended. And that's always been, and that's the case. And all I'm saying is, there's no way to avoid that.
But why should they be? No, why is it?
Because church. I mean, you're asking an atheist this question. But
that's what I'm trying to say. It's like, I've watched plenty of media that has, had made statements. I mean, like, if you go to school, right? Like, just academia alone, you're challenged on different principles, different ideas, different concepts. Don't get offended by it.
You can't fix that, and the writer can't fix that. People will be offended. The question is, does he mind? Does he care that they'll be offended? Let's say you're making a game. Let's remove the religion aspect altogether. You can make a game about anything. If it's critical of something, then someone's going to be bothered. You have to make a decision, therefore, as a creator. Do I care that Group X will be offended? And are they the target? So there is the example. So if that's your intent, then fine. You don't make a game like that without wanting. If he wants to criticize a group, that's his choice, and that's a statement he wants to make. But he can't be surprised when it happens, right? He has to go in knowing it'll happen. Wherever I've offended people with a viewpoint that I've been fine with it. I don't care if climate change deniers are annoyed at Subsurface Circular. I don't care. It's fine. I'm sure the people who made Wolfenstein don't care if literal Nazis are offended that they shoot Nazis. What I can say from experience is terrible and very frustrating as a creator is when you accidentally offend a group and you feel that they're justified and you didn't mean to. When you through a mission or through a choice you've made, people refer to it as punching down, but like, I think that's a too specific a phrase, but kind of doing, offending the wrong people, offending people who actually you're on the same side as, that sucks. And that's where intentionality comes in, where you have to decide what you're trying to say. It's not enough to just say, oh, I'm going to make a game about this theme. It's like, no, what is the message? Because you have to be precise. You have to be specific in your targeting of these are the people who will be offended, and I can live with that. And then on top of that, you have the layer of, is it commercially viable to offend these people? But it's all like, I keep circling back to the same thing, intent. And it's something you worry about a lot in terms of like optics. Like, you're someone who talks about that a lot, about knowing how things are going to be perceived out in the world. And that's all I'm saying is, with game design, I have to make the same kind of decisions about how my game will be received. And if you want to offend Group X, then go for it. You absolutely have the right to do that. But you have to live with, obviously, the fact that they will be offended. You can't solve
and the
that
consequences.
Problem. And the consequences of it's free speech, right? You can speak freely, but there will be consequences to your free speech. If that's what you want, then go for it. If it's not, then allegory is a great way of talking about things. And, and you still will offend people. But, like, you'll hopefully... The goal here is not to not offend people. it's to offend people, but not to be upset about it. Essentially, like to be okay with who you're offending, to live with it. And if you can live with it, then that's great.
Solid episode. If you have a burning question about games, game development, or just about the complexities of the universe, no, seriously, good
to be very
question.
clear, though, Nazis are bad. That's some common ground we can share.
Well, yeah. But no, it's amazing how structured this episip was without being
somehow
structured.
Came together.
Yeah.
It somehow came together.
Well, that's a really solid question. Like that question. If you've got questions, send them to contact@BithelGames.com. That's contact@BithelGames.com, through the YouTube comments of the show, or on Twitter by pinging @MikeBithell or @Slowinski. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Bithell Games Podcast. We can always use your support, so please provide reviews and 5 stars on iTunes, likes and subscribes on YouTube, and positive reinforcement on whatever other platforms you're hearing the show on whenever possible. This podcast was produced by Jonathan Downen. We'll be back next week. I'm Alexander Slowinski. Thanks again, and get in the last word, Mike.
Amazonian.